NFL roster cutdown day is right around the corner, and the Eagles just made a major shakeup to their roster, as Howie Roseman just went out and made a flurry of trades to bring in several intriguing players, including a familiar face on the offensive line. And believe me, the Birds are just getting started. So in this video, I'll break down all the Eagles' most recent moves, as well as give my prediction for the Birds' initial 53-man roster after cutdown day. Plus, there's been some buzz that the Eagles should look to acquire a superstar pass rusher with a newly proposed trade, so I'll give my thoughts on that as well, and we're starting right now. Alright, so at this point, we are just counting down the days to the Birds' season opener against the Dallas Cowboys, and I've said it before, so I'll say it again. I am just so excited to finally have real Eagles football back, and I'm ready to have a large portion of my mental health over the next 5-ish months determined by this football team. So I'm sure most of you guys can relate to that. And I just cannot wait to see what this new version of the team looks like and how they perform coming out of the gates. But in the meantime, while we wait for the season opener, the Birds have certainly given us a lot to talk about. As on Sunday, Howie Roseman made not one, not two, but 3 different trades to shake up the roster ahead of final cuts. And all of them were pretty significant. Now, the first one happened on Sunday morning as the Birds swapped a 2026 5th-round pick and a 2027 7th-round pick for Vikings quarterback Sam Howell and a 2026 6th-round pick. And as I said in my last video, I actually think that this is a very good move. I mean, for starters, obviously the Eagles already have a backup quarterback in Tanner McKee, but right now he's dealing with a finger injury and we don't know if he's going to be back for the start of the regular season. So you want to be confident in your backup quarterback behind Jalen Hurts. And if McKee's not ready to go, I'm going to feel okay about Sam Howell being the primary backup as opposed to Kyle McCord or Dorian Thompson-Robinson, because, I think Howell has proved that he can be a very solid backup quarterback in this league. Now, he was probably going to get cut by the Vikings, which isn't a great sign. But, again, he has showed some promise and flashes in this league before. Like, just go back to 2023 when he was the starter for the Commanders. And, it wasn't all great as he had a 1-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio that season. But he also threw for almost 4,000 yards on a 63% completion percentage. Now, obviously, there's a reason he isn't starting anymore. But again, I think he is a very solid option as a backup quarterback. And again, I think, if for whatever reason Howell does have to play some snaps this season or he does have to start a game, I'm going to be a lot more confident in him to step up than I would be in somebody like Kyle McCord or Dorian Thompson-Robinson, which, by the way, DTR was actually the first Eagle cut on Sunday afternoon, I believe, which, I don't think that's any sort of surprise considering the fact that in the 2 preseason games that DTR did play in, he did not look good at all. And then in the preseason finale against the Jets, he didn't even play a single snap. So, writing was on the wall for him. He has now officially been waived. And then rookie quarterback Kyle McCord also was waived on Monday. And this I don't think is a surprise either. Now, I do think McCord had a solid camp. He showed flashes in the preseason as opposed to DTR, but he still didn't look very good. And with the trade of Howell, obviously, there just wasn't any room for him on the active roster, so they decided to let him go too. Now, I do think there's a solid chance he's back on the practice squad, but I'll get more into that later. And just overall, I do think that trading for Sam Howell was ultimately a smart move by Howie Roseman and the Philadelphia Eagles. But that said, I think that their next move was actually their best one of the day, as the Eagles made a trade with the Jacksonville Jaguars, sending a 2026 7th-round pick in exchange for the now once-and-again Eagle and Super Bowl champion tackle Fred Johnson. And again, I gotta say, I absolutely love this trade because, back in March when Fred Johnson left in free agency to go to the Jacksonville Jaguars, I wasn't too happy about it because, one, I thought the Eagles very much could have afforded to bring him back. I mean, it's not like he got a lot of money. And, second, I think it was very much worth it to bring him back because I think last year, Fred Johnson proved that he is the perfect backup swing tackle for this offensive line. I mean, early in the season, you saw Lane Johnson go down, and I think it was in that Saints game, and then he wasn't able to play against the Buccaneers either. So, Fred Johnson came in, he stepped up, and I think he performed very well in Lane's absence on the right side. And then just a little bit later, Jordan Mailata went down with an injury that kept him out for, I think, 4 games. And Fred Johnson, once again, stepped up and played this time on the left side at left tackle, and I think he performed very well there as well. So, again, I thought he was a very valuable piece for the Eagles' offensive line last season, and if either Mailata or Lane goes down at any point, I'm going to be confident in Fred's ability to step up and play well, because again, we saw it last year. So, again, I don't know why they let him go in the first place, but I'm happy that Howie Roseman righted that wrong and brought him back, and I think this was an absolute A-plus trade for the Birds. But then, following that move, the Birds also made yet another trade on the offensive line, this time sending another one of their Super Bowl champion offensive linemen elsewhere, as they specifically traded tackle/guard Darian Kinnard to the Green Bay Packers in exchange for a 2027 6th-round pick. Now, first off, I do want to say thank you to Darian Kinnard because he obviously was a part of the Super Bowl winning team, and I think he was just a solid depth piece for the offensive line last season. And also, side note, it's pretty crazy that he's won 3 straight Super Bowls in just 3 years in the league. Obviously, those first 2 years with the Chiefs and then the last year with the Eagles. And again, he was just a nice story last year to make the roster after kind of being an underdog coming into training camp. But that said, I do think that this trade makes a lot of sense because, after getting Fred Johnson back, that makes an already crowded Eagles offensive line room even more crowded. And I think, Kinnard was almost certainly going to get cut, and there's also a very solid chance that he wouldn't even be able to make it back on the practice squad. So it looked like they were going to lose him either way, so you might as well get something for him in the form of a draft pick by making this trade. So overall, I think it was a very smart move by Howie Roseman. Again, just to get something out of somebody that you were just going to let go for nothing anyway. So yeah, Sunday was certainly a very crazy day for the Eagles, making 3 different trades. I mean, that's just unheard of. And if you just take a step back and look at it, it's really been a crazy month of making moves because obviously, again, you got the 3 trades on Sunday, and then you also got the John Mechie trade, which happened just last week, and that's significant as well because he's now the team's wide receiver 4, and he's just 1 injury away from playing significant snaps for the Eagles offense. And, the crazy part is, the Eagles might not be done making trades or making significant moves yet. However, the big rumor that's been floating around now is that the Eagles could still make one last-ditch trade effort before the season starts to land Bengals' disgruntled superstar pass rusher Trey Hendrickson. As recently, ESPN's Bill Barnwell wrote an article going over 10 trades that could still happen before the start of the regular season, and in it, he suggested that the Eagles could trade young, up-and-coming edge rusher Jalyx Hunt, along with a 3rd-round pick in 2026 and a conditional 2027 pick for Trey Hendrickson, with the reasoning being that the Birds could use more firepower on that defensive line after some of the departures this offseason, and they could probably find a way to pay Hendrickson big money for the next couple seasons if they get creative. Now, personally, I don't think this trade is very realistic, nor do I think it's really a good idea, just because next offseason, you gotta pay Jalen Carter a huge mega extension. You also gotta find a way to extend Nolan Smith next offseason, and then the offseason after that, you got Quinyon Mitchell and DeJean who are then eligible for extensions. And then, even aside from the guys that you have to pay in the future, they already have a bunch of big money contracts on the books for some of their biggest stars, mainly on the offensive side of the ball. So to then add Hendrickson into the mix and pay him a huge amount of money, I just think would be pretty difficult to do, and it definitely throws a wrench into things. And then on top of that, I also really like Jalyx Hunt and think that he has star potential. I mean, I've said it all offseason long that I think he's the Eagles' biggest breakout candidate for this season. So, I don't really want to trade him if I don't have to, especially not for a guy who, sure, he's obviously a superstar and a very good player, but I just, he's 30 years old. You'd have to pay him a huge contract, so I just don't think he fits in with the Eagles' long-term plans. So in my mind, this trade is just not worth it, and I don't think the Eagles would even consider it either. But moving on though, of course, like I said earlier, roster cutdown day is on Tuesday with the deadline being at 4 p.m. And the Eagles have already made a ton of moves to cut down their roster to try and get down to 53 guys ahead of that deadline. So I'm going to run through the list of guys that have already been cut as of 4:33 p.m. on Monday. Obviously, by the time I upload this video, there's a pretty high chance that more guys have been cut, but as of right now, this is where it stands. So obviously, you got quarterbacks Dorian Thompson-Robinson and Kyle McCord, which I talked about earlier. Then you got defensive back Lewis Cine, who, I thought there was a chance maybe coming into camp that he could have made the roster, but, he was waived partially because he got injured in the preseason finale, so no surprise there. Then you have an interesting one in offensive lineman Kenyon Green, and this is a guy that obviously he was a part of the C.J. Gardner-Johnson trade, so obviously the hope was that he could make the roster or maybe even push for the starting job at right guard, but it just didn't pan out that way. He didn't have a very good camp, so not a surprise to me that he got waived. Maybe he could be back on the practice squad, but we'll see. Then you got tight end E.J. Jenkins, another guy who I think could be a practice squad candidate, but just didn't make the final cut. Then you got tight end Nick Muse, running back Keelan Robinson, running back Montrell Johnson Jr., who I think is another candidate for the practice squad. Then you got running back Shunderick Powell, safety Maxon Hook, and also probably the most notable cut of the day, and that being cornerback Eli Ricks. And this is a guy who obviously has made the roster the past 2 years after going undrafted in 2023, but this year, just with the way that the whole cornerback room shook out, he didn't quite make it. So, not a huge surprise, just again, because I think with the other guys the Eagles have, there wasn't really enough room for him. Definitely notable that he got cut. Hopefully he's able to make it back on the practice squad. And that brings me to the next part of the video, because I actually have made predictions for the Eagles' initial 53-man roster after the cut down deadline tomorrow. So I'm going to go through those real fast. So we'll start at the quarterback position, where I have 3 guys making it, those being Jalen Hurts, Tanner McKee, and Sam Howell. Obviously at this point, that is pretty much all but locked in. Then at running back, you got Saquon Barkley, Will Shipley, A.J. Dillon, who I think he's somebody that there's been a little bit of debate back and forth as to whether he's going to make it. Personally, I do have him making the cut. And then Ben Van Sumeren, obviously him being the fullback, and the 4th and final guy I have making the roster there. Then a wide receiver, I have 5 guys, those being A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Jahan Dotson, John Mechie, and Darius Cooper. Now, you could debate maybe Ainias Smith might make the final cut. As of now, I don't have him making it, but we'll see. Very much could happen. Then at tight end, I have 3 guys, those being Dallas Goedert, Grant Calcaterra, and Kylan Granson. I don't think there's any surprise there either. Then offensive line, I think, is the most interesting position group, because there's a lot of guys that could make it and a lot of tough decisions that have to be made. And, I go back and forth with some of these, but as of now, this is how it sits for me. I have 10 guys making it, those being obviously the 5 starters in Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, Tyler Steen, and Lane Johnson. And then I have 5 backups, those being Fred Johnson, Matt Pryor, the rookies Drew Kendall, Miles Hinton, and Cameron Williams. So, I have all the rookies making it. Maybe you guys have it differently, could go differently, I don't know, but this is just how I see it as of right now. Then at the edge rusher position, I have Nolan Smith, Jalyx Hunt, Josh Uche, Azeez Ojulari, Patrick Johnson, and then I do have the rookie Antoine Powell-Ryland making it. I definitely went back and forth with him and then somebody at the next position, that being defensive tackle, where I have Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Moro Ojomo, Ty Robinson, and Gabe Hall. And again, I went back and forth with APR because I think here at defensive tackle, there's a chance that Byron Young could make the cut. But as of right now, I have APR simply because he's the rookie and he showed more in that last preseason game. But again, I could be wrong there. Then at linebacker, I have Zack Baun, Jihaad Campbell, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., and Small Munnon Jr. No real surprise there. And then cornerback, I got Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Adoree Jackson, Healy Ringo, Jacorian Bennett, and Mac McWilliams. So 6 guys. Again, don't think there's much debate at that spot. Safety, I got Reed Blankenship, Sidney Brown, Andrew Mukuba, and Tristan McCollum. And then for special teams, obviously, you got Jake Elliott, you got Braden Mann, and you got long snapper Charlie Hewlett. So there you have it. That is my initial 53-man roster prediction. Again, I go back and forth with a couple of these guys. Very much could be wrong, probably will be wrong. So we'll see how that all shakes out by tomorrow, see how accurate my prediction was. And then just for fun, I predicted the practice squad as well, with that being Kyle McCord, Montrell Johnson Jr., Ainias Smith, who again, I do think there's a chance he actually makes the roster. Then there's Terrace Marshall Jr., E.J. Jenkins, Brett Toth, Kendall Lamb, Trevor Keegan, Holland Pierce. Again, I think there's a chance that some of these offensive linemen could make the roster, while some of the rookies I had making it end up on the practice squad. And then I got Byron Young, again, a guy who I think very much does have a case to make the roster, but as of now, I got him on the practice squad. Then I got Agbo Okoronkwo, O'Shawn Mathis, Eli Ricks, Perry Nickerson, Andre Sam, Tariq Castro Fields, and then the international player exemption, Laken Bakalahi. And then for IR, obviously, I got Nakobe Dean, and I got Johnny Wilson. So, again, those are just my predictions, but give me yours down in the comments below, because I'm sure I'll be very wrong, you'll be very wrong. It's going to be very different. So we'll see how it all shakes out by tomorrow. And also, you guys know I'm going to be continuing to cover everything Eagles related in the lead up to the start of the season. So if you don't want to miss anything, make sure you subscribe and you turn on notifications. That way, again, you don't miss anything. And also, leave a like down below to show some support, because it really does help me out a ton, guys. See if we can get to at least 500 likes on today's video. And also, if you watch another Eagles video going over 10 Eagles who impressed everybody during training camp, you can check this out right here. And now with all that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this one, guys. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.